So hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Hope Mitchell, and I am excited to be hosting Skin of Color's virtual networking meeting. Before we get started with our conversation, I would like to thank Pfizer and Mr. Jim Rigby for sponsoring this meeting. Jim, do you have any comments?
I would like to just make a couple of comments if I could. Thanks, Dr. Mitchell. This is now our third year sponsoring these networking events, and obviously the first year doing them virtually. So I'm glad we were able to make that happen. A lot of people on your team, were able to make that happen, which we weren't sure at first how that was all going to come together, but a lot of good teamwork. I really look forward to getting back in person and doing these again next year. Either virtually or in person, however it works out for you guys. But I just wanted to say the partnership has been terrific over the last few years, and I enjoy attending these meetings and really getting to see a lot of familiar faces out there. So I look forward to just sitting back and listening to your topic. And again, thanks for letting me have a couple of minutes to say hello to everybody.
Well, thank you so much, Jim, and we thank
Sure.
Pfizer for your continued support. So before we get started, I do have some housekeeping rules. I am, of course, the moderator of this conversation. So conversation means it's a two-way, that I'll be talking and I hope that you all will be talking as well. Please feel free to speak in one of two ways. So you can either speak to me through the chat box or you can unmute yourself. And provided that we're all respectful of each other, you don't need to raise your hand, just jump in. We want to make this a fun conversation. Please select your view on the top right corner of the screen. This meeting is being recorded and it can be viewed at Skin of Color's website. And that address is at skinofcolorsociety.org. So today we're going to be discussing the influence of social media on dermatology. In our conversation, I would like to also take an intersectional look at the importance of skin tone, aging, and gender diversity in social media. So bookmark that. So, let's talk about the evolution of social media. So I remember a time in 1998, early 2000, when dermatologists went to work, they saw patients, and then they went home. And aside from potential charting, that was the end of your day. That was the end of your work day. You were done for the day. If you wanted to elevate awareness about yourself or about your practice, you placed advertisements on TV or in newspapers or magazines, and you basically waited for a return on the investment that you made. In fact, most brands were also delivering their messages across TV commercials, magazines, newspapers. We were all unsuspecting of the change about to come. Right? The evolution of social media has been fueled by the desire to communicate and by advances in digital technology. So right now we look at social media as a way to connect with families. We look at it as a way to connect with friends, patients. It has even become a retail platform for many. It's a vital marketing tool. It has been integrated into much of what we do today. So I quote, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, social media is defined as forms of electronic communication through which users create online communities to share information, ideas, personal messages, and other content such as videos. According to 2020 statistics, there are 3.5 billion social media users worldwide. In 2005, the year after Facebook went live, it was reported that 5% of Americans use some form of social media. In 2019, that percentage rose to 72%. And I bet with the pandemic, the 2020 percentage will be in the 90s, like 99% probably. So with all that having been said, let's jump right in. Let's tell me why you think social media has become so popular. Like what is it about social media?
This is Dr. Strawn. I think there's a lot of evidence out there that social media is designed to be addictive. So it's become popular because it is engineered that way. And it's taking advantage of some of our brain wiring as human beings. And that's what it's designed to do.
That's very interesting. That's not something that I wrote down. And I wrote this question just kind of asking myself. What do you guys think about that? The addictive, I know it is addicting, absolutely.
Actually, this is Dr. Maritza Perez. There's been evidence, there's actually a book called The Hacking of the American Brain. And in there, it is documented how there is a pathway for happiness and a pathway for pleasure. And unfortunately, in the world that we live, it's been equated and they are totally different. Happiness pathway is through serotonin, and the pleasure pathway is through dopamine. And actually, all the opioids and alcohol and all the addictive substances are in that pathway. And actually, social media has also been associated with the pleasure pathway.
I agree. Anyone else? Why is social media so popular?
Hi, this is Zoe here. I'm one reason I think is because we're just visual in general, visual people, and it's easier to like a picture than to, go back in the day and read someone's blog or their live, what was it called? Live journal or whatever, So I think it's just bite-sized information. Sorry, the Jeezy Gucci battles on in the background. Hope you can't hear that.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's fast. We can do it on the go. We're just go people.
Well,
and
then
if we have, go ahead, Dr.
Oh,
Hartman.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Hey, Hope. Thank you for doing this. Corey Hartman here. And I agree with what everybody has said. There's also, now that it has been monetized and taken over by capitalist forces, we are being manipulated just like we're being manipulated on every other internet interaction that we have by marketing. So, they're tracking all of our moves and tapping into our interests and the other connections that we make on these media and using that to get us to engage even more, and not only more, but in ways that are, productive to people who tend to take our money or seek to take our money. So there's a good documentary, you've probably all seen it on Netflix, called The Social Dilemma, that kind of backs up some of what all of us are talking about, and how these were deliberate systems, much like, some of the systems in place that support systemic racism, that are bigger in a framework that we can't even see because we're so caught up in it.
Yeah, I agree. I think the monetizing and how can we make money, I think a lot of things that we face, it's always, let's get back to the dollar and how we can be more productive, that way. I mean, I think about, I grew up on the, you would go to the payphone, and then, payphone went away, and now we have these, cell phones that are in our pockets and, with us at all times. And just think about, we thought in the beginning, or at least I did, when payphones went away, I thought, oh my gosh, they're losing money. But was the complete opposite. Anybody else have a point? Why is social media, why is it so popular? Okay, for me, you know, I joined social media honestly because I wanted to meet people. And I know that that sounds pretty, you know, generic, but it's true. You know, many people that are on this platform, if I hadn't joined social media, honestly, I would not know a lot of you. So that was one reason that, you know, I decided to join. A lot of people decide to join because it's free, you know, it's user friendly. I think that people of all ages can find at least one platform that they can join. And in their mind, they can be either entertained by it, they become addicted to it, what have you. So I think that, you know, there are different reasons. Anyone else? I should be checking the chat box. Anyone else want to add? Why is it so popular? Because it's not going away. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. It's so important to businesses that if they can't micromanage their platforms, there are social media managers that are placed into the budget of companies and businesses to make sure that their platform runs smoothly or productively, or that it makes money for them. So let's think about a timeline. Okay, so I find this to be very interesting because social media, it didn't just, you know, land. It kind of went through phases. And as I was preparing and doing research, depending upon the resource that I read, you know, some people would say that social media began with, you know, the telegraph back in 1844. Other people will say it began with the internet, you know, back in the 70s or 80s. I personally remember emails. I remember like it was yesterday when we were able to start to be able to email people, you know. So, you know, mentally for me, that was really a cool change. But really consistently, the first social media platform was called 6 Degrees. That was the first platform. And it really was like a networking site that you know, could lay out your profile and you could meet people. I'm going to run through a whole bunch of things. So then we ended up with MySpace. And I don't know if anyone remembers MySpace, but what I remember about MySpace was the terrible selfies. Like you look at the pictures and you'd be like, oh my gosh, you know, really? So I remember that. And then in 2004, it was Facebook. In 2006, it was Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. Then we had the hashtag, right? In 2008, Facebook hit 1 million active users and they developed the like button. In 2010, there was emoji. 2010, there was Instagram, Pinterest, apps. And then in 2011 came Snapchat. As we continued on, Facebook reached 1 billion users. And then we got into 2014 was the year of the selfie, right? So that's when we started to see all of these selfies. 2015, I remember Periscope because I actually used it. And that was really the first app for live events. Then in 2016, we had Facebook Live, IG stories, Twitter doubled their character limit from 140 to 280. And then in 2018, I think we all, if we're on Instagram, we remember IGTV. And now what do we have in 2020? We have Reels, right? So we're constantly evolving. And the reason that I went through that timeline is that social media is not going to stop. And so we have to decide, how are we going to evolve to keep up? And how are we going to use these platforms, whatever they're going to be productive in what we're trying to do? So with the ability to reach consumers through social media, brands quickly adapted. And so what we find is that over time, they moved away from TV and commercials and placed those as secondary options. And what brands have started to do is they understand the most efficient way to leverage the message that they're trying to get across to audiences is to partner, right? To partner with KOL, which would be a key, opinion leader or an influencer, to really get their message across by using that influencer or that KOL. They're engaging their audience to get their message across. So my question that I have to you all is, in your opinion, what's the difference between a KOL, an influencer? Is there a difference? Where do we stand with that? Why do brands need KOLs or influencers? What is your opinion about, those terms?
This is Dr. Strawn. I tend to think of a key opinion leader as someone who's actually an expert in a particular field, whereas an influencer is just someone who's popular. And I don't know if that's a correct definition, but that's what comes to mind when you use those two terms.
I agree with you. I think of influencers as being, popular, and they have lots of followers, and, they may not know a lot about, the industry or what they're promoting, but I think of them as being someone that, marketing believes that they could somehow get the word across. People are going to believe what they say.
In some ways,
Anyone else?
influencers are more impactful because, whether or not they are the experts, they get people to act, they get people to click, they get people to engage. So there's something to be said for that.
Mm-hmm. I think you just answered another question that I was going to ask is, why do brands want to work with influencers? But I need for us to really differentiate, because as us being medical professionals, doctors, and I don't know if we have nurse practitioners or PAs, or we need to really decide who we are and the value in who we are. As a KOL, we can influence. And what does that mean? Anyone else?
This is Dr. Perez again. And I just want to share that, I feel that we as professionals have to be the right influencers because we have the knowledge and we carry the truth. Influencers, in my opinion, and I can be wrong, is a group of people that utilize social media for their own benefits because they have the know-how of attracting attention to what they're informing the other 10 million followers that they have. I really am working very hard during the day doing surgeries. I don't have time to select or contact 10 million people. So if we're going to maintain the control of our specialty and the knowledge of it, we need to place ourselves in the right position because we are the ones in control. I don't want to be called an influencer. I don't want to be called a provider. I am a physician. I am trained in the field of dermatology. I'm an expert in dermatology, and that's the way that I want to be portrayed. And I don't need any influencer for me.
Great points. Now, here's a comment I have. So if we feel this way, then if we're the experts, but we're not giving the expert information, because we're great. We're great at talking to our patients, providing information. I mean, that's what we do all day long. But how do we stop the influencers, some of them that are just doing it for popularity. They're not providing accurate information. If we are not the ones to step up and do it, you know, who do we trust? I understand. I agree with you, because I'm working as well, and it's very difficult to do that. A lot of these influencers, that's their main job. You know, that's all they do. We're seeing patients. And so as many of us are, you know, no one can provide more trustworthy information about conditions that affect the hair, skin, and nails than board certified dermatologists. And so we have, you know, our domain, you know, that we need to stand up for, and we need to protect it. But I also feel like, how do we do that? You know, that's kind of a second question. You know, how do we effectively do that before we look up one day and there's just a bunch of influencers, you know, that are 20 and 25 years old that are talking about things we should be talking about? What do we do? What do we do, family?
Well, I think that the whole pandemic and racial justice movement made the non-professional influencers, it rendered them somewhat helpless and ineffective. And I felt at that point that a lot of brands saw that the type of content that they were having success with, either they weren't able to fly to Paris to take a picture with the skin cream in front of the Eiffel Tower, or, you know, I don't know, whatever it is that they do, you know, because I have some that I work with in my office, and you're right, it's not their main job, it is their only job. You have people who are dropping out of college who know how to edit videos and pose and get the right angles, who are making serious money on the social media platforms. So, but it seemed like it seemed hollow, it seemed shallow, it seemed empty. And when the world needed meaning and the world needed truth, they stopped engaging with them and really started to pay attention to the doctors again. So that's been one of the unintended consequences of some of the events of this year, is that we have started to reclaim some of that for ourselves. We have to do a better job because we're not very good advocates for our own profession. Maritza, we're all busy, I know. But that, I think, has also been a reason why we found ourselves in this position, because we just weren't, you know, paying attention to these interlopers creeping on our scope, if you will. So, yeah, that's why I think it's important that we're all on here. And I agree with you. You know, especially now that we can't go to meetings and meet each other in person. It's been a great way. There's pluses and minuses with everything. And social media has its downfalls, but it also has some positives, because we first became acquainted on social media, and now we're really good friends, just me and you. So, you know, we can have positives. And I'm glad that we're in these spaces so that we can reclaim that title and really get the word out, to remind everybody who the real experts are.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, I have a question too that I just came up with. You know, if we're to get out there and on social media and, you know, to talk about anything that we're passionate about, or to be the expert, do we have to have the science to back everything that we talk about? Do we have to have the scientific studies that say X, Y, and Z in order for us to promote it?
I think that we should, this is Maritza again, I think that we should just maintain the professionalism that we are known for. I think that the standards don't change. If we change the standards, then we are just going to be another influencer. And I think that if we maybe contact the way that we are right now being promoted by the Skin of Color Society to have this meeting, this virtual meeting, I think that if we contact every single one of our institutional, our professional societies, being that the American College of Mohs, the ASDS, the American Academy of Dermatology, the Society of Skin of Color, if all those institutions that are supposed to promote for us get aware, or they're made aware of how our profession, our knowledge is being escaping our hands because we're working and the influencers are taking the pictures and posting them in social media. Maybe that can help all of us integrate and make the best out of this. Because I think that we individually don't have the time. But if we get our professional institutions and our professional societies to work together, I think that we will get the message. And I think that the message needs to be professional, because I don't need to go to the Eiffel Towers with a cream of Neutrogena to demonstrate that I like Neutrogena. I need to know that the hyaluronic acid that is in Neutrogena is effective for moisturizing the skin 1,000 times more than if it's not there. And I think that that should be the message.
Thank you. Thank you so much for participating. You really have added a lot of insight to the questions, and I really appreciate your, joining in the conversation. Anyone else want to comment?
Yes, I wanted to make a comment. My name's EB. I'm a fourth year medical student at Brown. I think it's great, all of the things that everybody's mentioned, but I also want to underscore the fact that some of these influencers are creating spaces for people who don't have access to a dermatologist within their community that is of color, or they don't even know where to start to get the resources. And I particularly like the brands that partner with not only influencers, but also experts like all of you in your fields, because they're allowing people to get more access to that information, but also allowing the experts to talk on it and give them some more information on where to go to get care. So I don't necessarily think influencers are all bad, but I do understand why it's important to create this fine line between your roles.
I agree with you. I don't think all influencers are bad either. But, I also think that there are times when I've seen big companies that we as dermatologists work with, and I think for them to reach out and to have an influencer promote their product as opposed to, talking to dermatologists or getting dermatologists to do it, I have a little bit of a concern about that. Just because you have lots of followers, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that either. So it is a fine line. I think that, we can say positives on both sides, but you are absolutely right. We definitely need to get the word out in every community. And that's why we're here. I think that we all, if we're not on social media, we should start to think about, what impact we can make for the betterment of our patients, because that's really what I think the primary goal is. So let's shift for a second. Should dermatology residents start a social media page? I think I have some residents on, and should they market themselves when they're in residency? I'm curious. What do some of the attendings think, and what do the residents think?
I actually asked this very question to some current residents, and I'll keep them anonymous, but I got two separate answers. One was absolutely. In fact, she said that she was able to negotiate in her contract, because she has so many influencers, she was able to negotiate a higher salary or something like that. And then I had another person say, absolutely not, because if you're on social media, and you're like, oh, I've got time to do X, Y, and Z, and then you're in clinic and you don't know your stuff, it's like, well, you got time for social media, but you don't have time to read. So I think it's like a double-edged sword there.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think as a first-year resident, that really should not even be on the table. That's my opinion. We all have opinions. This is a conversation. I think as a first year, your focus is to learn the books. I know that we're going to be going through everything more than once, but I personally do not believe that there's a place for social media as a first year. We need to be learning all 3,000 skin conditions that we have to learn, how to treat patients, how to take care of patients. We need to be focused. We're not an expert on anything yet. So, you know, I'm going to be strong about that one. But,
I agree with you,
I,
Hope.
okay.
When I
Thank you,
see
doctor.
when I see some of these residents, I'm like, but are you going to pass the boards? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's great to have followers and have great pictures and stuff, but if you don't pass the boards, it really doesn't matter. And I'm shocked that that would be a stipulation for a salary negotiation, because that is ridiculous. I'm an employer, and I don't care how many followers you have. That doesn't translate. You can buy followers. I mean, there are ways to manipulate that, and that doesn't necessarily mean anything about your value as a dermatologist, your knowledge base, or any. In fact, it might tell me something quite the contrary. So that is very interesting, Zoe. But the first thing I think when a resident is just always popping off on Instagram, I'm like, whoa, what program are you in? And does your program director know?
Right.
This is Dr. Strawn. I would say I would agree with what I've heard. It's a matter of actually really thinking about what your intention is, because it's a smart business move to build a following that doesn't necessarily translate into money. I mean, I'm going to quote Cardi B. Apparently, when she hit 1 million followers, she made some comment, I have 1 million followers, but I don't have $1 million. And it's really about leveraging brand. And a 15-year-old in their bedroom can do that. And they actually have more time and energy to do that than we do. So you have to think about what you're doing. If we're going to brand ourselves as professionals, as board certified dermatologists, that's a very different thing than just being very popular. And sometimes companies will want to work with people who are popular, who are going to sell more of their products. It's just about it's a different strategy, and you can have both. But I would caution residents, and I've seen this, that, some people who come into residency already, with a lot of followers, and I didn't know that about them. I was kind of shocked to find out that they seemed like they had another job being an influencer, but they couldn't tell the difference between a skin tag and a wart, and so you have to be careful where you put your energy, because residency is like boot camp. And you're going to, once you become an attending, it's actually, you're busy, or your life takes off, you have other things going on. So you better learn it when you're a resident. So if you're getting distracted when we have a lupus patient asking me about how I treat dark circles, which the patient doesn't have and didn't come in for, you might be missing out on some things that you'll need later. So it's about understanding what you're doing at the moment. It's a good strategy to start early. There are benefits to it, but you've got to be careful that you don't miss out on your training trying to be an influencer when you're a resident.
And I will just add, in the defense of all residents here, that, we live in a social media, like, it's just part of your world. We update our stories and our posts to update the people in our lives that we don't even have time to talk to. We talked about online relationships. And I think, especially if you're a resident, all you're doing all day is derm, then, it reflects that. You've got your coffee, look at how I start my day, so I think, not to bash on people who use social media, but I guess, like, knowing your role. And I think residents, at least the ones that I've seen, try to stick to the basics, like drink water, use sunscreen, as opposed to trying to, like, make themselves an expert in the field.
Zoe, you bring up a really, really good point. We can also think about how can we be productive with giving out information, right? I think that's kind of a spin that we can put on this. So for example, if you start a blog, right? So you could start a blog and you could provide some very useful and productive information. And as you get older in residency, that may become something different. But you can certainly start out, I think, with doing something like that. You can talk about eczema, so I think that there are ways that residents can be productive. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I don't think you should do that, but I agree with you. I think that there are ways that we can, again, to the benefit of our patients, we can provide accurate information. And I think, if you're writing good blogs, that's helping you to retain and learn information. So
I would
that's a
say
great
no one
point.
was bashing residents who do that or anyone, you know, we all live in a social media world, but I think it is very important to remember that we are living in an attention economy. So all of these things, it's like death by a thousand cuts. You know, when your attention gets drawn to your Instagram page more than your patients in clinic, it may seem like just a little thing, but it's actually a lot of your attention that is supposed to be somewhere else learning things that you're going to need later to establish yourself as an expert.
Mhm.
Oh, definitely. Didn't come off as bashing at all, but I guess just to give like the rationale as to, you know, what's the thought process behind it. I don't think people are necessarily doing it to say that they're the experts, you know, they're still in training. Um, but sometimes it's just a reflection of their world and they want to share it.
Do we have any other feedback or input from any of the residents? What are your thoughts? Or newer attending physicians, you know, what your approach was when you were a resident? So I think, you know, in terms of residents and starting social media pages, I think that there've been some really good points, you know, in terms of should you or shouldn't you do it? And I think, you know, our stand, you know, in summary is remember that first and foremost that we need to learn when we're a resident, and we need to keep that as a priority. Because our focus is to be able to pass the boards. And so what you do beyond that, you know, as a second or a third year, you can certainly grow within your social media page. But I think that we all want to see more dermatologists. And so we want to make sure that in your program that you're learning. So let's shift. I have another question. Let's talk about, you know, brands and what they're looking for. You know, I think there's been a pivot. I think that there's been a change with, like Dr. Hartman said, you know, with Black Lives Matter and seeing skin of color out there and being at home. And I think we just haven't had the opportunity, because we've just been going and going, to really think about what we're seeing. I think that we've bookmarked, you know, some things that we didn't like, but we just didn't act upon it. And so, you know, I want to get into a little bit about visual diversity and representation, and does it matter? You know, and maybe some of the things that you've seen change since COVID, you know, since we've entered into the pandemic, and we really have had a chance, especially earlier in the pandemic when we were at home, to really see what's out there. Does it matter? Does visual diversity matter? Does it matter, you know, that skincare brands, that they're seeking diversity on their platforms or not seeking diversity? And what does that do for you when you see a brand that's not diverse?
Lack of diversity is an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. It sure is. Well, I see diversity as being beautiful. And for me, not that I'm extremely active on social media, but from a personal standpoint, when I have made a decision to be on social media, it's because I have really believed that we need to see more brown faces, right? We need to see more brown. We need to see older, you know, we need to see more elevation in age, not just 20 and 30-year-olds, right? So we need to see 40s and 50s. We need to see men. I think it's really important because we want our patients to see that and to learn. And so I think that diversity, visual diversity, is very important. We want people to believe and understand that it's safe to use a lot of the products that are out there. What do you guys think?
I agree. It's nice to see the Instagram algorithm that I curated on my screen have the brands represent that too on their feed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too, the companies that promote, you know, skin of color diversity realize the buying power that people of color have and want to tap into it. So, I mean, as much as I love to think that it's because they think diversity is beautiful, I think it's also like a strategy for them to capitalize off of in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good point. Very good point.
Hey everyone, so good to see so many people on this call. I was just going to echo what Zoe said. I think it's great to see a lot of companies wanting to expand on diversity, but of course with everything that has kind of happened the last few months, you know, there is this tokenism that is also going on, where some companies are trying to find, you know, their token Black person now to add to their, you know, panel or add to their you know, influence or social media or marketing. They're trying to get them to be part of their campaigns. So, you know, I've definitely been approached by multiple different companies, and some of them, you know, I ask, you know, really important questions, you know, how does their company align and what is their company supporting? Or is this, you know, are they doing something that's just reactive because of everything that's going on? So I definitely think, you know, it's a great opportunity, but sometimes I still, you know, have to also question, you know, some of the companies.
And I agree with you too, you know, in terms of, you know, are you supporting, you know, skin of color, or are you supporting, you know, organizations that need the support? I think that's really important too. You know, where is your dollar going? Anyone else? Like, really, when you see a company and you see a person of color, what does that do for you? What are your thoughts? Do you think it's about time? Do you think we need to see more?
Hi, my name is Jade. I'm a medical student, and this question actually resonates with me because when I see a company that has or that showcases a person of color, I find myself actually going to their page and scrolling, and I find myself scrolling to see when that sort of pattern began, and if I see that it happened after the passing of George Floyd, then I feel as if it's kind of like either like it could be one of two things. It could be performative, or it could be like they're actually listening to the voices of people of color and actually improving. And so I don't know, I kind of take that into consideration because it's definitely about time, but it's not like this is anything new that we've been pushing for.
Mm-hmm. And I also think that, you know, during this time, I think a lot of companies, yeah, we could say they knew they weren't diverse, but I think sometimes when things are brought to your attention, then you really do reevaluate, you know, and I think that there are some companies that, you know, may have made the change because they knew it was the right thing to do. And like Dr. Davis said, you know, how can we monetize this, you know, if we make that change? I think that, you know, we definitely can look at it both ways. And it is our job when we decide if we want to partner with a brand to try to see through that, because we want to work with companies that are genuine. We want to do that. Are there any other comments? So who do you all think really should be out there? You know, we're here because we want to align dermatology with where we need to be from a social media aspect, right? We want to understand the influence, what that's doing to our business, and what we should be doing. So, if you're a person who's not on social media at all, or if you're a person that's on, what would be the advice that you would give us as a community in terms of how we can advance and really, keep our territory, keep our domain? There's some that may be deciding, do I start a social media page? Do I not? Do we have anyone that's experienced with social media that can give us advice?
Hi, this is Candrace Heath from Philadelphia. And I just wanted to chime in to say, I think that everybody should reserve their real estate. So, get some kind of handle that you like with your name or whatever name you want, so that when you are ready to use it, the name that you want is not taken already. So that's one thing. And then the other thing for students and residents, of course, you all know, I have already told you all this, that the number one thing is we want you to get into dermatology, and we also want you to perform well during residency as well. So I'd even personally know how much time we can spend just scrolling on social media and how much time it can actually take to put posts together. So just know that, you don't have to do it every single day. You don't have to feel pressured by it. That the number one thing that we'll be most proud of you of is if you graduate residency successfully and you go on to nurture other dermatologists and carry forward the goals of the Skin of College Society. We'll be proud of you just for doing that. So don't stress yourself out about social. Just grab your handles, and they will be there when you have more time to dedicate to it.
Great advice, Dr. Heath. Anyone else want to comment?
I would just piggyback on this. This is Dr. Strawn. Let social media be your tool, not your master.
Mm-hmm. Agree. Absolutely agree. So, one thing that we have learned is that 2020, the trend is to find different ways to be engaging, right? We no longer can rely on just going to work and surviving. I know some of us on this meeting have very, very busy practices. They've, been thriving for quite some time. But that doesn't mean that, we still don't want to seek opportunities, because we're experts. Some of my colleagues on here are experts, and we want you to share the knowledge that you have, because we, like myself and residents, we want to grow and learn. And so we don't want you to just be in your office and not share and help us to grow and learn. And so it seems like, the way that we're going to be doing is we have to get in front of people in some way that we're comfortable with. And so I hope that, this conversation has, triggered all of us to think about our practice, be it residents, how we represent ourselves, because we are our own business. So regardless if you have a private practice or what have you, you are marketing yourself at all times. So it's important that whatever you do, you think about that. And, we've learned that we want to be respectful, we have priorities, we want to uphold our integrity, but we also have to know that there are moving parts. And so I hope that, we have thought about the future of our practice, the future of us and social media, and how we can leverage that to help others, to get our point out, get information out. I think we agree that we want to make sure it's accurate information that we put out as well. And so, I welcome any closing remarks by, some of my colleagues, some of the residents. I welcome any closing comments that you may have. Just your perspective of the influence of social media on dermatology. maybe there's an angle that we really haven't discussed. If you have some last minute comments, that would be great.
I appreciate everyone's time. I mean, I think this is really something to think about, you know, to let it rent space in your head and marinate as I start training and, you know, as I come out of practice, just hearing some of these unique challenges and, you know, hopefully we can still, you know, process it and, you know, find a ultimate solution. Is that embracing the influencer and finding a role for them? Is that stepping up and making it a point to put yourself out there more so that, you know, the key opinion leader can also be synonymous with influencer? There's lots to think about, and I appreciate everyone.
Thanks for joining, Zoe. Thank you so much. Anyone else have any final thoughts? Well, I want to thank you all for participating in today's regional networking and educational symposia discussion. We look forward to seeing you at future virtual meetings. And we don't know how things will go over the next months, but we look forward to actually being in person, you know, one day. And again, we thank Pfizer, and we thank Mr. Jim Rigby for sponsoring the meeting this evening. And I want to remind everyone that this meeting has been recorded, and you absolutely, if you've joined late and you want to hear the meeting, you can certainly pull it up on Skin of Colors skinofcolorsociety.org, I believe it is. So, or yeah, you can pull it up there. And if you have any feedback or comments, you can certainly email the society as well. So thank you so much for joining. I've enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks, Hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.